The skimmer burst from the cloud line into open space, stars glittering against the black canvas of the void. But the beauty was drowned instantly by chaos. Before them, the battlefield stretched across the heavens. Human frigates locked in. Desperate combat against towering Vathar dreadnoughts. The dreadnoughts were monstrosities, each the size of a floating city, armored in jagged obsidian plates that caught the light of plasma fire. Their weapons lit the dark like collapsing suns, shredding human ships with merciless efficiency. Smaller Vathar destroyers swarmed like sharks around their titanic flagships, herding the humans into kill zones. Marcus's jaw tightened. His fleet was bleeding. Hulls ruptured, explosions flared, bodies vanished into the void. Yet despite the slaughter, humanity fought back. Fragile frigates darting like knives, unloading torpedoes into gaps, fighters streaking between enemy cannons, with suicidal precision. "This isn't a battle," Serenia whispered, staring at the devastation. "It's execution." "Not today," Marcus growled. He slammed the skimmer's comms. "This is Captain Hale. I have the vessel. Repeat, I have Serenia. All ships, regroup on my beacon. We're not done." The fleet answered with weary but fierce acknowledgement. Across the void, damaged cruisers and battered squadrons pivoted toward his signal, forming a ragged line in front of the dreadnought advance. The Vathar responded instantly. 3 massive flagships shifted formation, weapons charging. Their leaders had felt the shift. The ritual was broken, their offering lost. Rage radiated from them in every barrage. "Marcus," Serenia said, gripping the edge of the console, "we cannot outgun them. Even your courage has limits." Marcus looked at her, calm even as firestorms ripped around them. "Courage doesn't win battles. Ingenuity does. You said their power ties to you. Can you use it?" She hesitated, fear flashing in her silver eyes. The energy within her was wild, unstable. It could kill her if she unleashed it fully. But then she remembered the Marines who had cheered her strength. She remembered Marcus's promise. No one left behind. "I can," she said firmly. Marcus opened a channel fleet-wide. "Listen up. We're punching through their line. Serenia's going to crack their shields. When she does, you fire everything you've got. No hesitation." A Marine commander's voice came through, ragged but determined. "Understood, Captain. We'll follow your lead." Marcus angled the skimmer toward the nearest dreadnought, engines straining as it cut through the swarm of interceptors. Enemy fire locked onto them instantly, but Marcus wove through it with razor precision, every maneuver pulling them closer. "Now!" he shouted. Serenia raised her hands, closing her eyes. Energy surged from her core, violet arcs dancing across her body until the cabin glowed with raw power. She extended it outward, lashing against the dreadnought's black armor. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then cracks of light ripped across its shield. "Hit them!" Marcus roared. The human fleet unleashed hell, torpedoes, rail slugs, and plasma bursts slammed into the weakened shield. It shattered like glass, exposing the dreadnought's core. The next volley tore through its hull, ripping the colossal warship in half. The explosion lit the void, sending shockwaves across the battle. Cheers erupted across comms. "One down!" But there was no time to celebrate. The other dreadnoughts turned their fury on Marcus's beacon, concentrating every cannon on his. Position. The skimmer shuddered violently as a near miss ripped away a wing. Alarms wailed. Marcus fought the controls, sweat pouring down his brow. "Hold it together, girl," he muttered to the ship. Serenia pressed harder, veins glowing as she funneled more energy. Another dreadnought's shields buckled, its armor cracking under human fire. But every pulse drained her. Her breathing grew ragged, her skin pale. "Enough," Marcus said sharply, glancing at her. "You'll burn yourself out." Her lips curled into a faint smile. "Then let me burn. My people deserve freedom." Before he could argue, the universe itself shifted. The stars dimmed. The battlefield stilled as an impossible shadow stretched across the void. Space rippled like water, bending around a presence too vast to comprehend. Out of the darkness came teeth, rows upon rows, stretching farther than sight. A maw opened, swallowing starlight, and tendrils of cosmic flesh writhed. Like serpents through the void, the devourer had awakened. The Vathar panicked. Their fleet scattered, formations breaking apart in terror. Dreadnoughts fled, their commanders abandoning centuries of doctrine in seconds. But humanity didn't run. Their ships held formation, ragged and burning, facing the abyss. Marcus's voice cut through the silence like steel. "All guns on me. We're going to kill a god." The Devourer's arrival turned the battlefield into silence and terror. Stars vanished behind its colossal form, its tendrils stretching like living shadows across the void. Entire wrecked hulks disappeared into its maw, crushed in moments. Even the Vathar dreadnoughts, once arrogant predators, now scrambled, like prey. But Marcus's voice cut through the comms like a blade. "Hold the line. It bleeds like anything else, and we're going to make it bleed." The human fleet rallied, battered ships locking into formation. Every gun swiveled toward the monstrosity. Serenia, trembling and drained, leaned against Marcus's seat. Her silver eyes flared weakly. "Its hunger is endless. You cannot destroy it with fire alone." "Then we don't just fire," Marcus said. "We fight smart." He barked orders, frigates fanning wide to bait its tendrils, cruisers targeting the joints of its appendages, bombers diving at the glowing sacs pulsing along its sides. The fleet moved like a wounded wolf pack, coordinated, desperate, lethal. The Devourer responded with fury. A tendril the size of a city lashed forward, impaling a destroyer. The ship's screams vanished into static as it was dragged into the abyssal maw. Another tendril whipped through the void, smashing half a squadron of fighters into dust. Marcus clenched his jaw, steering the skimmer through the chaos. He weaved between collapsing frigates and erupting plasma blasts, all while keeping his eyes locked on the Devourer's core, a vast pulsating organ glowing deep within its chest. "That's its heart," Serenia whispered, sensing the rhythm of its life force. "But to reach it, we must open a path." Marcus nodded. "Then we carve one." He opened the comms fleet wide. "All units converge fire on its chest cavity. Don't stop shooting, no matter the cost." The fleet unleashed everything. Torpedoes streaked across the void. Rail slugs hammered into cosmic flesh. Plasma beams carved trenches into its hide. The Devourer howled, a sound that rattled bones and bent steel, a roar carried across the vacuum. As vibration in the soul, it retaliated with impossible power. From its maw erupted a gravitational beam, ripping apart an entire cruiser in one sweeping breath. Serenia staggered as the psychic echo of the monster's hunger washed over her. She collapsed, clutching her head. "Stay with me," Marcus urged, steadying her. Her voice was faint. "I can shield you. One last time. But it will take everything." "No," Marcus snapped. "You're not dying here." Her hand found his, squeezing with fragile strength. "If I fall, promise me this. Humanity remembers we stood together." He met her gaze, and for a heartbeat, amid chaos, there was only the two of them. Then he nodded grimly. Promise kept. "Now let's end this!" Serenia rose, light blazing from her body. She screamed, unleashing a storm of energy that tore into the Devourer's defenses, ripping open its chest. Flesh and bone peeled away, revealing the glowing core within. Marcus seized the moment. "All ships now! Everything you've got!" The fleet obeyed. Torpedoes streaked like meteors. Plasma fire converged in a blinding lance. Even dying vessels rammed themselves into the wound, detonating reactors in suicidal brilliance. The Devourer, convulsed, its maw thrashing, tendrils lashing wildly. But the firestorm didn't stop. Marcus guided the skimmer straight into the breach, engines burning white-hot. "Marcus, you'll be caught in the blast!" a voice shouted over comms. He smiled grimly. "Someone has to light the match." Serenia placed her glowing hand over the console. Not alone. Together, they plunged through the monster's torn chest, diving straight toward the heart. Marcus armed the skimmer's core, overloading its reactor. Warning sirens wailed as heat flooded the cockpit. The Devourer's heart filled the viewport, a massive organ pulsing with malignant light. Marcus whispered, "For humanity." Serenia echoed, "For freedom." They slammed the skimmer into the core. The explosion was apocalyptic. Light consumed the void, brighter than any star. Tendrils writhed, shattering into ash. The Devourer's maw stretched in silent agony before its titanic body disintegrated, collapsing into nothingness. Silence followed. Where once had loomed a godlike horror, there was now only scattered stardust and the drifting wrecks of battle. The human fleet, reduced to a fraction of its strength, floated victorious. A voice broke over the comms, hoarse, disbelieving. "The Devourer is gone." Then cheers erupted, raw and defiant. Humanity had survived, but in the wreckage, one beacon remained. A battered escape pod drifted clear, the skimmer's emergency capsule. Inside, Marcus stirred, bloodied but alive. Serenia lay beside him, her glow dim but steady. The Hall of the Vathar Elders was not built for mortals. It stretched like a cathedral forged from obsidian, its walls etched with runes that pulsed with blue fire. The floor shone like glass, reflecting the towering forms of the aliens who had gathered for this night, the night of the ritual. Thousands of eyes glowed in the gloom, their chants rumbling deep enough to shake the bones of any who dared step within. At the center of it all stood Serenia. Her tall frame was forced to her knees, her violet skin marred by the biting glow of the chains that bound her wrists and ankles. Each link was forged from plasma thread, humming with a vibration meant not just to restrain, but to weaken. Every time she tried to move, the chains sizzled against her flesh, reminding her she was no longer her own. But her eyes, those silver, sharp eyes, still carried fire. Even as the elders chanted her doom, even as the crowd celebrated her coming sacrifice, she refused to look away from them. She hated them more than the pain. The ritual of binding was older than any written record. Once every century, a chosen vessel was sent off-world, delivered into the void as tribute to the entity her people called the Sleeper Beyond Stars. The elders called it necessary. She called it cowardice. The hall grew louder as the elders raised, their staffs, their forms draped in heavy robes that shimmered with the light of nebulae. Their voices intertwined into a single thunderous command that shook the chamber. Bind the vessel, seal the pact, preserve the cosmos. Serenia clenched her jaw. They would never speak her name, never honor her as anything but a tool. She had been chosen not because of courage or strength, but because she was expendable. Then, the doors crashed open. The sound was like a thunderclap, a brutal shattering of ceremony. Blue firelight spilled across the intruder, a figure smaller than any Vathar, yet carrying a presence that rivaled the elders themselves. His boots struck the floor with confidence, each step echoing like a challenge. He was human. Captain Marcus Hale. His armor was scarred and dented, still smeared with ash from the war raging outside. His helmet hung at his side, exposing sharp features, storm-gray eyes, and the grim set of a man who had walked through hell and refused to bow. The hall fell silent. The crowd had never seen a human inside their sacred chamber. Marcus's voice cut through the silence, steady and low. "Release her." It wasn't a plea. It was a command. The elders shifted. their hollow eyes narrowing. One rose, robes swaying like storm clouds. His voice was venom wrapped in authority. "Human, this is not your concern. You tread on the law of the stars. Leave, or be ground into dust." Marcus didn't flinch. He let his gaze travel across the crowd, across Serenya's chained form, and then back to the elders. "I don't care about your law. I care about her. She's mine now." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some in the crowd recoiled. Others leaned forward with hungry interest. No one spoke to the elders that way. Serenya's heart hammered in her chest. She didn't understand. Why this human, a soldier from a species considered weak, would claim her in front of the galaxy's most feared rulers. But she felt something shift in the air. For the first time in years, the elder's control didn't feel absolute. The elder who had spoken let out a slow hiss, raising his staff. "Arrogant creature, you believe you can change what has been written for eons?" Marcus stepped closer, fists curling, his voice rising like a storm breaking free. "I don't believe. I decide." The tension snapped. Guards surged forward, their armor clanking, spears glowing with energy. The elders barked orders, and the chamber filled with the roar of weapons charging. Marcus moved before they reached him. His hand shot out, snatching the nearest spear mid-thrust. With a twist and a violent strike, he sent the guard crashing to the floor. Sparks erupted as the weapon hummed in his grip. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some screamed for blood. Others shouted in disbelief. Serenya, chained and weakened, could only watch as this single human fought with a precision and fury she had never seen, his movements honed by countless battles against impossible odds. He wasn't faster, he wasn't stronger, but every strike, every motion was deliberate, forged from survival. Where the Vathar relied on size and brute force, Marcus used cunning, angles, momentum. Within seconds, 3 guards lay sprawled across the floor. He didn't waste time. He turned, jammed the spear into Serenya's chains, and forced the weapon's energy core to overload. The links shattered in an eruption of sparks. Her body trembled as freedom surged through her veins. For the first time in days, she could stand. Her eyes met his. There was no arrogance there, no claim of ownership, only a soldier's promise. "No one gets sacrificed," Marcus said, voice low and unshakable. "Not while I'm breathing." The elder's roar shook the walls, but something had already changed. For the first time, Serenya wasn't just a vessel. She was free. And for the first time, the elders had been defied, not by an army, but by one human who refused to bow. The chains fell in shards around Serenya's feet, their glow fading into nothing. For the first time in her life, the impossible had happened. An outsider had defied the elders inside their own sanctum. The crowd of Vathar warriors and citizens erupted into a frenzy of sound, outrage, disbelief, and for a few, a flicker of awe. The guards regrouped quickly, their armor shifting into combat mode, jagged plates snapping into place as their plasma spears crackled with lethal charge. They towered over Marcus, their shadows swallowing him whole. To them, he was a fragile thing, flesh and bone wrapped in primitive armor. But Marcus's stance said otherwise. "Get behind me!" he barked at Serenya, though his eyes never left the advancing guards. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. She had never hidden behind anyone. Yet something about the way he said it, firm, unshaken, made her step closer. The first guard lunged, a massive spear arcing down like a falling star. Marcus pivoted, catching the haft of the weapon on his gauntlet and twisting his body just enough to redirect the strike. The spear slammed into the floor, cracking the stone. Before the guard could recover, Marcus rammed his elbow into the alien's chest, following with a brutal kick that sent the giant staggering backward. Another came from the side. Marcus yanked free the fallen spear and drove its glowing blade upward. The weapon thrummed as it pierced armor and flesh, dropping the warrior in a heap of smoke and sparks. The crowd gasped, their chants faltering. Serenya's breath caught. She had seen countless executions staged for ritual, but never had a single fighter stood against the Elder's chosen without being torn apart instantly. More guards rushed forward. Marcus ducked under one swipe, rolled across the floor, and hurled the spear like a javelin. It struck with such force that the energy core overloaded, exploding in a spray of molten light. Bodies were thrown aside. "Enough!" one of the elders thundered, their voice shaking the walls. The ancient alien slammed his staff down, and arcs of lightning leapt from the runes. But Marcus didn't flinch. He grabbed Serenya's hand and pulled her toward the nearest archway. For a split second, her heart stuttered. No one touched her. Like that, not as property, not as sacrifice, but as someone worth saving. The elders howled, their chants twisting into curses. The chamber became a storm of sound and fury. Marcus led Serenya through the chaos, ducking thrown weapons, dodging bolts of energy that scorched the air around them. By the time they burst into the open sky, the world outside was fire and war. Above the temple, the black void was alive with battle. Human ships, sleek, battered, smaller than their enemies, clashed with the colossal dreadnoughts of the Vathar. Explosions lit the heavens, streaks of plasma cut across the night, and entire mountains shook as wreckage rained down. Serenya froze at the sight. She had never seen a species so willing to fight the Vathar head-on. "Your people, they're dying." Marcus tightened his grip on her arm and pulled her into motion again. "They're holding the line for you, for us. Now move." The air stank of ozone and burning stone as Vathar skimmers screamed overhead, firing volleys into the human formations below. Marcus guided Serenya through the twisting streets, weaving between towering statues and half-shattered walls. Everywhere, civilians fled in terror, their faith in the elders collapsing in the face of real battle. "Why?" Serenya demanded between gasps as they ran. "Why risk so much for me?" Marcus glanced at her, his jaw clenched, eyes sharp. "Because I don't leave people to die. Doesn't matter who you are." A plasma bolt tore into the ground beside them, blasting them off their feet. Marcus rolled, dragging Serenya into cover behind a broken column. The stones steamed as fire rained down. He tapped his comm. "This is Hale. I've secured the target. Repeat, I have her. Tell command. The vessel is free." Static answered at first, then a strained voice broke through the chaos. "Captain, we're barely holding. Casualties are heavy. 3 destroyers gone already. We can't keep this up." Marcus's gaze hardened. His people were bleeding for this moment, and retreat wasn't an option. He turned to Serenya. "Listen to me. The elders won't stop. They'll burn every world before they give you up. But their power, whatever it is, it's tied to you. That's why I need you alive. If we can break that chain, we break them." Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken of the elders like that. Not with defiance, not with belief that they could be broken. The air shook as a Vathar juggernaut crashed into the street ahead, its massive frame blocking the path. Its weapon, limbs unfolded with a shriek, ready to slice them both down. Marcus rose, battered and bloodied, spear still in hand. He squared his shoulders, eyes locked on the monster. "Stay behind me," he said again, and this time Serenya didn't hesitate. The juggernaut roared like metal grinding against metal, its body a living engine of war. 4 plasma cannons whirred to life, and the air filled with a high-pitched shriek that set Serenya's teeth on edge. The elders had unleashed one of their sacred war machines, and Marcus was standing against it with nothing more than a stolen spear. "Move when I say," he told her, voice sharp but steady. The machine's cannons fired in a blinding storm. Marcus threw himself forward, dragging Serenya down with him just as the street behind them vanished in a molten explosion. Heat washed over them, burning the air from their lungs. The juggernaut lunged, heavy limbs slamming into the stone road. Marcus rolled to his feet, eyes scanning its movements. He wasn't trying to match its strength. He was reading it, the way he'd studied enemy tanks back in Earth's wars. Patterns, weak spots, anything he could turn into an advantage. He sprinted, weaving left and right as plasma blasts scorched the ground. The spear in his hand vibrated with unstable energy. At the last second, Marcus slid under the machine's bulk, jamming the weapon into a joint where armor plates overlapped. Sparks erupted. The juggernaut shuddered, roaring in mechanical pain. "Now!" Marcus shouted. Serenia reacted without thought, her hands lit with violet fire, energy bursting from her palms. She struck the spear Marcus had planted, amplifying its core until it detonated like a star. The juggernaut convulsed, toppled sideways, and collapsed in a heap of sparking wreckage. Serenia stared at her hands, trembling. She hadn't used her gift openly since childhood. Elders forbade it under threat of death. Yet Marcus had drawn it out of her as if it were nothing more than breathing. He grabbed her hand, pulling her forward. "Don't stop. We've got more. Hell coming." They ran, weaving through ruins as the battle above raged. The sky itself was a nightmare. Human frigates shattered under beams from Vathar dreadnoughts, while squadrons of smaller craft screamed through dogfights that lit the darkness with fire. Wreckage rained down like meteors, slamming into streets and tearing apart buildings. Everywhere they turned, Vathar forces poured in, armored infantry, drones buzzing with blades, tanks that shook the ground with each tread. Marcus fought through them with ruthless efficiency, using grenades, stolen rifles, and sheer willpower. Serenia added her strength, sending shockwaves into the earth that toppled enemies or cracked armor wide open. Still, the weight of numbers pressed down. For every enemy they dropped, 2 more closed in. Marcus opened his comm again. "Command, I need evac at my coordinates. I've got the vessel. Repeat, I've got her. If we don't get out now, none of us do." Static, then a strained reply. "Captain, skies are locked down. We can't reach you. Not with those war cruisers overhead. You'll have to fight your way to the docks." Marcus cursed under his breath. He glanced at Serenia. "How fast can you run?" She gave a small, grim smile. "Faster than you think." They bolted down an alley, cutting through a marketplace littered with shattered stalls and the bodies of those who hadn't escaped. The smell of ash and blood clung to everything. Serenia's chest ached at the sight, her people dying for a pact that was nothing but slavery. Ahead, a squad of human marines broke through a barricade, rifles blazing as they pushed back a line. A Vathar. Relief surged through Marcus's chest. He waved. "Hold your fire! It's me!" The squad leader turned, battered armor smeared with soot. "Captain, thought you were dead!" "Not yet. We're heading for the docks. Cover us." The Marines fell in around them, rifles spitting bursts of energy. Together, they carved a path through the chaos, every step forward bought with blood. Serenia fought alongside them now, her powers unleashed fully, shields of violet energy deflecting bolts, waves of raw force smashing enemy lines. The humans didn't recoil from her as her own people would have. They cheered her. One Marine shouted over the din, "Damn! Remind me never to get on her bad side." Serenia's heart twisted. For the first time, her gift wasn't feared. It was celebrated. The docks came into sight at last, a sprawling platform overlooking the sea, ships lifting off under fire. But between them and escape, a Vathar heavy walker crashed down, legs like towers, cannons glowing. Marcus's comm crackled with Command's desperate voice. "Captain, enemy reinforcements incoming. If you're not airborne in 5 minutes..." "You're staying there." Marcus raised his weapon, eyes locked on the walker. "Then we make 5 minutes count." Serenia stood beside him, energy surging at her fingertips. For the first time since her capture, she smiled, not in fear, but in defiance. "Then let's show them," she said. "What happens when the chains break?" The roar of the battle faded only when the skimmer lifted above the burning city. Its engines hummed with a low vibration as it tore through the smoke-streaked sky, weaving between collapsing towers and falling debris. Inside the cabin, Marcus finally let his shoulders drop. His armor was scorched, his gauntlets cracked, and his body screamed for rest, but his eyes stayed locked on Serenia. She sat opposite him, still trembling, her hands faintly glowing with the energy she had unleashed. The violet light pulsed, against her skin like an echo of her heartbeat. For the first time since they'd fled the Elder's Hall, she allowed herself to breathe. "Why are they so desperate to keep me?" she asked quietly. Marcus studied her, trying to read the cracks behind her fierce expression. "Because you're not just a symbol. You're leverage. You know something, don't you?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. She had never spoken the truth aloud, not even to herself. But the sight of human ships dying above her city, the memory of soldiers cheering her strength instead of cursing it pushed her past the fear. She met his gaze, silver eyes reflecting the flames below. The ritual isn't about honor. It isn't about faith. It's about feeding something ancient, something the elders fear. Marcus leaned forward. "Feeding?" "The sleeper beyond stars," she whispered, the name tasting of ash. "The elders call it a god. In truth, it's a beast, older than galaxies. It drifts in the void between suns, waiting. And when it stirs, it hungers." Her voice broke as she spoke the words she had carried since childhood. "The sacrifices aren't tradition, they're meals. Every century, we send it a vessel strong, enough to satisfy its hunger, just long enough to keep it from devouring entire worlds." The skimmer jolted as turbulence rattled the cabin. Marcus barely noticed. His mind raced, images of the war outside flashing through his head. Humanity was already stretched thin against the Vathar, and now he understood. The elders weren't conquerors. They were caretakers of a cage. "And if you stop feeding it?" he asked. Her shoulders sagged. "It wakes. It will rise and nothing will stop it." The cabin fell silent except for the rumble of the engines. Marcus leaned back, fists tightening. He had fought tyrants, pirates, empires, but this was something different. This wasn't a war of fleets or weapons. This was survival against the dark itself. The comms crackled, pulling him back to the present. "Captain, enemy forces regrouping. The fleet's holding, but barely. We need orders." Marcus's jaw tightened. Two choices spread before him. Hand Serenia back to the elders. Keep the beast asleep, and let her people remain enslaved. Or defy the pact, risk the creature awakening, and face annihilation. He looked at Serenia again. She was watching him, fear and fire battling in her eyes. She expected him to choose the safe path. She expected him to bow, but Marcus Hale was human, and humans didn't bow. "No more sacrifices," he said firmly. "We fight it." Her eyes widened. "You don't understand. You can't—" "Yes, we can," he cut in. "We've fought impossible wars before. Every empire said we'd fall. Every enemy thought we'd break. But we don't break, Serenia. We adapt. We survive." The conviction in his tone shook her more than the words themselves. He wasn't boasting. He wasn't bluffing. He was certain. Tears pricked at her eyes, not of fear, but of something dangerously close to hope. Before she could speak, alarms blared. The skimmer lurched violently as plasma bolts streaked past the hull. Vathar interceptors had locked onto them, sleek hunters diving with trails of fire. The cabin lit with red warning lights. Marcus leapt to the controls. "Hold on!" The skimmer banked hard, engines screaming as he threw it into evasive maneuvers. Enemy fire chewed through the air, close enough to sear the paint. Serenia braced herself, the cabin rattling so violently it felt like the vessel might come apart. Marcus's hands moved with deadly calm across the console. He ducked under one volley, then kicked the engines into overdrive, launching them into the upper atmosphere. The interceptors followed. "They won't stop," Serenia shouted over the alarms. "Not until I'm in chains again." Marcus shot her a quick grin, sharp and unshaken. "Then let's give them a chase they'll never forget."